Let's talk about Gnosis. Okay. So, the tarot card number 14 is Temperance. On this beautiful card here, yes, this is one of the cards that is very much about the alchemy. There's a few cards, tarot card number 17, tarot card number 14, tarot card number 19 are very alchemical cards. But yes, this is there's a lot of alchemical symbolism in the card. And Samael even often calls this, he says this card can mean matrimony, marriage, in a reading. But I've not seen that person, but I'm just saying it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, yeah? So, excuse me. In the explanation of the elements, she has behind her here a star, or he says a sun, and the sun, he says, has 14 rays, 7 visible and 7 invisible. The 7 visible represents the planets, matter, and the 7 invisible represents the chakras and the hidden, the spiritual substance. Yeah, on the plate you have here a woman mixing 2 vials. Yeah, so she has one. This is supposed to be red. I don't know why they did it blue, but it's supposed to be red, red and white. Here you go. Now it's red. Oh yeah, red and white. And so he's mixing the 2 substances. And this is very much the alchemy. Yeah. The red, the sun, the man. Yeah. The white, the moon, the woman. It also reminds us of the alchemy. So the elements of the alchemy. Peter has 2 keys. He has the sulfur and the mercury. And if you've read Dante's Purgatory, there's a beautiful line where he says, what does he say? He says, both keys require, one is more important, but the other requires more art. You heard that? One is more important. So there's 2 keys that turn heavens to doors of heaven, yeah? So Pete has the keys of heaven. You often see him in classical Catholic beautiful pictures as having 2 big keys, or having 2 keys in his belt, etc. And those are the keys of heaven. And so the one that's more important is the gold, because the gold key is the Kundalini fire. It's the mercury plus sulfur. You understand what I mean? The whole point, I guess you could say, of the beginning of practicing alchemy is to awaken the fire. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to awaken the fire. And so it's more important, the fire is more important. Once the fire awakens, then the process of the internal path begins, really in earnest. The process of the 3 mountains begins at the awakening of the fire. So the Kundalini is more important. The fire, the gold, the sulfur is more important, but the other requires more art. Meaning what? Without the mercury, yeah, even though the other one is more important, without the mercury, that one doesn't work at all. In fact, the alchemical term for the fire is mercury plus sulfur, or mercury enriched by sulfur enriched by mercury. You understand what I mean? So the mercury not as important, but it requires more art, meaning that for it to turn in the lock, yeah, for the gates of heaven to open, for the esoteric path to start, we must actually have started the process of transmutation and gone through the whole process of whitening and transforming our internal sexual substance, our mercury, until it reaches just that right moment for the sulfur to be added. So even though, as you said, the gold is more important, the silver requires more time, more effort, more work, or more temperance. Because that's what temperance means, yeah? Temperance is a tricky little word because, okay, temperance does mean balance, of course, but it also is from temper, which means to actually make something stronger. Do you understand what I mean? Like you temper steel to make it stronger, yeah? And so the mercury has to have been moved to a point where it can accept the sulfur for that gate to open. That's pretty important because in modern what do you call it? I'm looking for a better word here. In modern spiritual terms, I guess you could say, people see the importance of the gold. They see the importance of the Kundalini, but they don't understand that they also need the mercury. Do you understand what I mean? Like for the doors of the path to open, people say, hey, the Kundalini is so important. And I've had people, I had this wonderful guy. There was a guy who sent me an email. There's a guy who sent me an email through the YouTube, watching YouTube classes, saying he accidentally incarnated the logo Samael. Ow. I can't laugh over broken rib. I'm sorry, it's just so funny. That's so funny on so many levels. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm sorry. I accidentally incarnated the Logos Samael, you know? And he told me, he's like, yeah, my birthday like corresponds perfectly with the day that he died. And then later in the email, I was like, actually, sorry, I got that wrong. I'm actually born 12 years afterwards. And it kept going. Then he's like, my wife is definitely Little Lantis, you know, because again, the dates meet up. And then again, the date didn't meet up. It was wonderful. But, you know, I've had many people come to me, tell me they've been working the Kundalini fire. And my favorite thing is a lot of them act like it just happened by accident. You know, I was out, you know, picking mushrooms and then taking mushrooms, and then I accidentally just awoke in the fire. I fell, I tripped, and I awoke in the cosmic fire. You know, I accidentally awoke the Kundalini. You know, you go to the Kundalini workshop, for instance, and the lady tickles your spine with the peacock feather, and she whoosh awakens the Kundalini fire. And then at the end of the session, she goes whoosh, and she puts it back down again. So these people are acknowledging the importance of the gold key, but they're forgetting the silver key. Oh, yeah, they're forgetting the silver key. They're forgetting the fact that without working the silver key, without working the mercury up to just the right point, it cannot accept the sulfur. Even if that were to happen, even if it were that the great, whatever it is, you know, let's say that the lady who awakens people's kundalinis with the peacock feather, let's say, just for the sake of this example, that she does have the gift, that she is a great awakener of kundalini. She is actually a guruji. That is what she is. Women can be gurus too, yeah? She is actually a sacred guruji, and as we know in Samael's doctrine, the guru has the capacity to awaken the kundalini of the disciple. Yes, but let's just be crystal clear that a guru is someone who's completely finished his esoteric path and is working and teaching their disciple, yeah? Not just, I can't do that. I'm not a guru, I'm just a guy. It's spelled differently, Guygur, you know? So, anyway, let's say that she can. She's a supreme guruji, and the other guru gave her the power, and now she's a great guruji. If your Mercury is not ready, this won't work. It just won't work. Yeah, she can tickle you for hours, you know what I mean? She could spend 3 days tickling your little coccyx with a super kundalini feather while you go about your daily things, and she's just there the whole time. It'd be very awkward. You know what I mean? But it's not going to work because the fire can't awaken the person who's not prepared. But man, I get this all the time. I never forget when I first got on Facebook years and years and years ago, back in Adelaide. I remember I went on the Kundalini page, the Facebook page dedicated to Kundalini, to try and spruce Gnosis. I started the Gnosis Australia Facebook page all the way back then. And then I think Jonathan Doyle runs it now. I don't know. Anyway, I started it way back then. I got rid of it because I hate Facebook. But anyway, yeah, I did it. And I went and I started, there was all these people. And this was like when Facebook was new and the idea of forums seemed really interesting. Like now Facebook just seems like exhausting. And like the only time you go on it is because you get sucked into it. And then afterwards you feel bad. And it's kind of like losing the sexual energy. You're like, oh, why did I do that? You know what I mean? Like it's like this really horrible feeling. It's like having a wet dream. You know, you wake up to yourself after being scrolling for a while. You go, what have I been doing? So anyway, but back then it was new and interesting and fun. You know what I mean? No one knew who Mark Zuckerberg was yet. And so I was looking at it. It was a Kundalini page, and it was amazing. There was all these. I started, because I got sucked in straight away. I got sucked in. I became a keyboard warrior, and straight away someone would be like, I awoke the fire, and I'd read it. I'd be like, oh, come on, and I get in there. I remember one guy said, there was one guy on there, and I thought this was amazing. He said, I accidentally awoke the Kundalini once in Mexico during a heat wave, eating chili chips. Yeah, he said, I was eating chili chips, and I was sitting in the middle of Mexico City, and it was a heat wave. It was full sun, and I was eating chili chips, and the heat was so intense that I awoke the Kundalini fire. Yeah, the sacred fire awoke within me because the chili was just too much. Can't do this so good. Crap rib. Anyway, ow. So, he said, but thank God I happened to be sitting next to the fountain because when I passed out, because that's what happens when you're waking the fire apparently while you're eating chili chips in the hot sun. He said I passed out and fell backwards, and the water immediately dropped the Kundalini down again. And I was like, this is insane. And then underneath it is all these people being like, same thing happened to me, mate. You know what I mean? And of course, I'm like, really, exactly the same. You were eating chili chips in Mexico City and you got heat stroke and fell in the water. Like, how many people have this one? Is this the secret thing? Is it the back of the book you've been looking and you find it? And the great master says, here is the great master, here is the great key of the invisible. This is how one awakens Kundalini. Chili chips in Mexico City. Anyway, I started writing back just a lot of these things, but being very nice about it, being like, no, I don't think that's what's happened here. I think you might have just got a bit of sunstroke, but Kundalini is actually much more interesting and more important than that. You should work towards it. And I started writing to all these people. Anyway, I caught the attention of the moderator of the page, and he recognized my way of talking. And you know what was amazing? That moderator? The moderator was a Gnostic, and the moderator had been in the center in no, is it Montreal? I think it's Montreal. My father let know. So my father became missionary. Don't quote. What are the Canadian cities? Quebec, Montreal, Toronto.
Vancouver.
Huh?
Vancouver.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Montreal. The French one. Anyway, that guy was in the house of my dad. He was already a missionary at that time. And he happened to be there. He knew my father. It was crazy. We had a long conversation. But amazingly, the guy worked the fire and then left Gnosis and just started sleeping around. I don't know. Anyway, I ended up having a long story with him, tried to get him to come back. It was a mess. But yeah, on that page, there was many people who understood the importance of the gold key. So they could see that it was the more important key. Yeah. A person's been transmitting their whole life. It doesn't matter if you haven't got the fire. Yeah. But at the same time, you're not going to have the fire unless you've been transmitting your whole life, or at least up until that point. Yeah. So you must have both. The lock doesn't open without both keys. Without the mercury, transmuted, worked, we'll talk about that, and the fire, awoken, yeah, into the transmuted mercury at the moment in which we are currently ready. But how does this process happen? Well, let's talk about it. So, Master Samael talks here about it. So he talks here about 3 stages: transmutation, transformation, and transubstantiation. And we're going to talk about these 3 things. He said that they're very strongly related to this card because that's what she's actually doing here. She's performing these 3 things. So the first is the transmutation, which I'm sure we already know. We've taught it many times in this class. Is the moving of your sexually creative energy. So it's taking it, the substance from within the semen or the woman's sexual substance, sexual fluids, and then actually moving it up the spine into the brain and down to the heart. But you're taking from it the ends seminis, or the ends, well, you're trying to extract the ends virtutis. But I'm pretty sure oh man, don't quote me because my brain's not very fast tonight, but that the ends virtutis being extracted from the ends seminis is actually only done in the alchemy. Is that right? Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But what you're doing is you're extracting the entity, the spiritual entity of the semen, which Paracelsus used the term ens seminis, yeah, is the entity from within the semen itself. You're extracting the true power. In Gnosis, we call this mercury, yeah, and you're extracting that. That's transmutation. And so we also refer to this as whitening the waters, meaning whitening our sexual waters. Our sexual waters are black. That's why you have those dreams. Often people, especially Gnostics, but people all over the world, have these dreams, like swimming in black waters. You ever had this swimming in black waters? You can go swim with the teacher, like it's the same thing. That's a jewel layered joke, because the water is black, but also like everyone goes there naked and it's really weird. Oh. Sorry? In Suffolk. I found that out the hard way when I first moved here. I was like, oh, this is a very interesting place. I was like, I'm going to go swim with the teacher. It's going to be lovely. Oh, there's a naked dude. Okay.
So, if you have an experience.
Sorry.
If you have an experience of like colors, like turning from black to white, or
That's right.
like say a car turning from like a certain color to another color. Is that...
Yeah, it can be the car, yeah. Cars often represent the internal bodies, though, so it can be a little bit more to do with the process of the bodies, but depends on the feeling of the dream. It can be a car, yeah, of course. Especially if the colors make sense. You know, you got a black car, it's moving to a white car, it has to do with the transmutation usually.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? On the other hand, like a yellow car, for instance, might be more likely the mental body. It just depends on the circumstance of the dream. Like that friend of ours who had that experience of when they finished the fourth initiation of fire and incarnated the mental body, they were just given like the car that they loved most as a child. They just this beautiful car. It was this beautiful yellow car. But when they went inside, it was like a church. It's the mental body, but understood from a slightly degenerated mind, unfortunately. But well, that's wrong. Just strange symbolism because of the way we are nowadays. So, so the waters go. Excuse me, sorry. The waters go through that process. They go through the black to white, to yellow. Sorry, it should go down, but I'm running out of space. To red, like that. And so that's why we say the whitening of the waters, because really this is the transmutation. It's the movement of our sexual energy. Okay, so Samael says that then transformation refers to converting or moving that energy, to taking that energy to the next level. So he talks about transforming. He basically says that if you want to take your transmutation game to the next level, you also need to work on the ego. That's what he really talks about here deeply. And so he says, yes, you're moving your energies, but then you also need to remove all of the stuck, the dry mercury. What's that, dry mercury? Dry mercury is the ego. So like if you imagine, like, let's see if I can use some different pens here. When the alchemists talk about, very alchemical things from the old days, they often drew sort of like this sort of Bunsen burner with this interesting file. Oh, gosh, you guys have got me now. And the little flask, And we explained this, I think, a few weeks ago, that it's a sexual fire, this is the 4 elements, etc. But what happens is you have this energy, and we're trying to move or extract from this base raw energy, which actually shouldn't be blue, it should be black, because that's what we're saying the problem is. We're trying to extract the mercury from within this sort of black water. Yeah. But what else is that there's more. Upon this apparatus, there's the dry mercury is sort of formed, kind of like you can imagine it like lumps, yeah? Like lumps, and that sort of makes this process. And usually it forms very much upon the actual apparatus itself, like in here, see where we're trying. So we're trying to move this energy up and out. I don't know if this is obvious to you guys. We're trying to move this energy up and out like that, and then down into the heart, to the head and to the heart. But the apparatus, the spine, has all these dots. Samael says that every time we fornicate, we create these little spots on the mental body. These are dry mercury. And then the ego, this is what the ego really is in itself, yeah? It is this, and it also lives off of this. That's kind of a thing about the ego. The ego is the dry mercury, but also lives off the dry mercury. And so what we actually have to do in order for this transmutation to work, because it's prevented by all these little things, is we've got to remove them. And that's, he said, is part of transformation. So we convert one energy to another, that's true, but also to transform hatred into love, to transform desire into love, to transform greed into, what do you call it? Like, the opposite of greed. It's like a temperance, I guess you would say. Not the simple knowledge of what is what is balance, etc. But basically, the transformation is the death of the ego, so that the transmutation can move along well. I think you may notice this perhaps if you've been transmuting your own sexual energy doing the Hamsar, for instance, as a single person, you may notice sometimes that images come up, like almost egotistical images come up. They're often lustful, but not always. It can just be sort of stuff. And even it can be from ages ago. Like I find I can be transmuting, and sometimes stuff comes up from like my childhood. But it'll usually be weird little egotistical situations and things. And that's when you got to do the transformation. That's when you can work with the mantra Krim and ask the Divine Mother to dissolve it from you, to take her fire and remove it from you. This is pretty important. Yeah. And so Samael says this is taking you to another level. You could transmute your whole life, but we also need transformation. So we're talking about transforming the lead of our personality into the gold of the spirit. Yeah? And he says that? That's what he means, the lead of, and it's referring not just to the person, it means the ego as well. He's talking about the lead of our personality, meaning the lead of our heaviness of our personality, our ego, all of our heavy substance, into the gold of the spirit. That's what he's saying. And that's the next level of transmutation. And so the last one, excuse me, sorry, is the transubstantiation. And transubstantiation, of course, which I missed the end, sorry. Transubstantiation is to move from one substance into another. Now it's interesting that the Catholics sort of know something of the mystery of the transubstantiation, but they don't really get the whole thing. The transubstantiation is achieved again in the alchemy when we transform the enseminus, the sexual force, into eventually the awakening of the fire. Like here, the raw matter and the sacred fire becoming the mixture of the Kundalini. This is when the true transubstantiation comes. I'm turning one substance completely into another substance. When I'm moving this raw sexual fluid and turning it into this spiritual substance, but it becomes a new substance again. Even quite physically, where the sexual fluid is then transformed into a energy and then actually feeds the brain and becomes new brain cells, goes internally and becomes the substance of the internal body. So actually becomes a a tangible substance in the internal as it becomes the body of the astral, becomes the flesh of the astral. That's transubstantiation as well. But in the Eucharist, we're talking about Christic atoms. So this is quite important. So when we practice the alchemy, we actually do get some Christic atoms if we're practicing properly. But Samael says the other way to get Christic atoms is in the Eucharist, which is the transformation of the physical bread into the body of Christ, and the transformation of the wine, or if you don't want to drink grape juice, into the blood of the Christ. And this is an interesting thing. The Eucharist is something quite powerful. Now, for the Eucharist, the situation Eucharist to work, the person has to have a connection with the cosmic Christ. They have to actually be able to work with the cosmic Christ so that the cosmic Christ can perform that. Is that still happening in Catholic churches? I highly doubt it. But at the same time, there is a great mercy in allowing people to do that. Do you know what I mean? In these days where everyone is so lost and everyone's so heavy and the world is full of all this degeneration and pain and misery, there is a great mercy in the fact that people are still able to perform the Eucharist, that they can still pray deeply to the Christ, and that some Christic atoms will actually enter into that bread and wine. The atoms of his body and his blood will enter into that wine. Into that wine, into that bread. And what that does is it will change, again, this substance will go into us and change our internal atmosphere, will work inside of us. That's why they do that. Just to be crystal clear, the Eucharist and the transubstantiation was given to us by Jeshua ben Pandira, was given to humanity as a specific act of trying to give us the substance of Christ. As I said, what they do now is kind of messy, because usually it's supposed to be performed by a Gnostic priest, a person who is transmuting and is working with the alchemy, and we're usually with the presence of an Isis, a female priestess as well, working together. Whereas now it's like, some guy, at the altar, and instead of a woman, there's like little boys. It's a bit weird. It just, the whole thing just smacks of degeneration. Then, you never know where the wafers come from. Thailand, okay. Thai wafers. You don't know, but you know what I mean, right? It's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. They don't really understand, but there still is something of that, yeah? The fact is that there is still, the people are still working with the Christ, albeit it's a little bit twisted nowadays, and very moralistic, but they are still working with the Christ. So the mystery of the Eucharist is still kind of there. It's just a bit lost. And what's interesting is a lot of people get that. You know what I mean? We have the Eucharist here in Gnosis, and it's interesting that we have Mass and we have Eucharist in the deeper in the second chamber of Gnosis. But yeah, as I said, a lot of people actually, that's what they're really looking for. I've had students come to me, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the connection to the Christ, to consume his sacrifice, to consume his body and his blood, to become one with him, yeah, to become substance to substance, part of him. And they're looking for that. And I think that may be a bit why there's so much movement right now in the youth towards Catholicism. You notice that? Catholicism is making a big resurgence. Huge. When it has no right to do so. We thought that thing was buried, right? It was making a big resurgence. And I actually talked to a friend who was a young man who joined Gnosis, and he joined Gnosis for the Eucharist because we had that. And then when he left Gnosis for Catholicism, for the Eucharist. I asked him, I said, why'd you leave Gnosis? Gnosis was too complicated. He said, to the Catholicism, I still have the Christ and the Eucharist, but just without that. He said it in his way. Yeah, Gnosis is like there's too much going on, mate. It's much easier here, you just take the bread and wine and we just commune with Christ. It's way easier to remember the Bible and the stuff Samael writes. Yeah, that's my old friend. Wonderful. Yeah, so that's what he wants to do. Okay, but he's still inside of himself. He understands that there is a great mystery in the Eucharist. There is a great mystery in the transubstantiation, that when we actually pray to the Christ, the cosmic Christ is actually putting atoms of his body and his blood into that substance so that it can come into us and that can transform us. That's what all these guys knew, St. Francis of Assisi, etc. They knew that. That's why they did it. You know what I mean? Not just because, each time we wanted to remember the day that Christ died. You know what I mean? That's what a lot of people think. They're like, oh, you do that so you can remember that just before the Christ died, he sat down with his mates and broke a bit of bread and, may or may not have put some blood in the cup, but, let's not talk about that. And then they all just had a good swig, and they said, we're going to miss you, mate. We're going to miss you too. And Judas like, I'm going to miss you, mate. He's like, are you, mate? Because remember, he already knew, yeah? He said, I already knew one of you would betray me. What was it Dad used to say that joke? He goes, one of you will betray me. And Peter goes, is it me, Christ? He goes, no, it's not you, Peter. And he goes, and then what is it? Bartholomew says, is it me, Christ? And he goes, no, it's not you, Bartholomew. And he goes, and then it's, what is it, John? Is it me, Christ? No, it's not you, John. And then Judas says, will it be me, Christ? He goes, will it be me, Christ? Because he already knows. I love that joke. It's so dumb.
Does Jesus respond like that?
Yeah, that's the joke. It's like, because he's repeating him, so Judas goes, will it be me, Christ? And Christ goes, will it be me, Christ? As in, like, come on, mate, you're going to betray me, so why don't you shut up? Do you know what I mean? But just the idea of the Christ being sarcastic is so dumb that it's just really hard to take that impression. But I love it because it helps us to understand, So the Eucharist, Eucharist is something beautiful. It's got nothing to do with guys sitting around like that. That image of all the men sitting at the Last Supper is about all the parts of the being communing with the Christ. That's what that's about. That's the symbolism of the end of the path, you know what I mean? Of the end of the second mountain, when all the parts of the being have been perfected and worked through to, what's it called? The second mountain,
Years of Job.
Yeah, the years of Job. And they come together with the Christ right before he is crucified, and then he resurrects immortally. And somehow she says this card is very much tied to the work of immortality, the work with the fire that brings us immortality. Okay, so that's the alchemy and transmutation. The last thing to talk about here is balance through temperance. I really wanted to talk about this as well. So if you see here the axiom of this card, it says, don't be like the straw before the wind, nor the wind before the straw. Oh, I was supposed to say or. I forgot to put it. Don't be like the wind before the. Don't be like the straw before the wind or the wind before. So this is very interesting. See, I find that balance has got to be one of the most misunderstood concepts in the whole of humanity right now. Do you know what I mean? Like people are like, yeah, you got to find inner balance. You know, they're talking about food, or they're talking about going on a diet, or they're talking about, you know, taking drugs. That's one of my all-time favorites. I just thought I'd just find some inner balance. And what they mean is I smoke marijuana quite a bit, and now I'm going to smoke a little bit less and do some meditation. And that's what they mean. I'm going to find inner balance, you know what I mean? And it can be even worse. I mean, if you're way further down, like say you're more out Nimbin way, it can mean that maybe you're just looking to downgrade from ice to marijuana. I think it's about time I found some inner balance. Do you know what I mean? Which means I'm going to stop smoking ice and just start smoking weed. And this is true. People literally think this way. Do you know what I mean? And you hear it all the time, and you hear people talk about inner balance. They've just got no idea. Yeah. Or I need to balance my work life with my just sort of feeling sorry for myself. None of this is really correct. And what actually happens is people are usually always moving, they're always flowing. Like recently, there was the announcing of the new missionaries course, which has been a bit of a ripple through our group because we got 13 candidates. That's a lot for any group. But anyway, one of the things is you got to be able to afford this very expensive course. And so I've had quite a few people all say the same thing. Mick, how do I budget? How do I work with my money? And I always say the same thing. It's like I said, you've actually got to you've got to be temperate. And to be temperate means, see, the way most people see balance is actually like this. It's actually a pendulum. They're like, I'm going to do something really bad and then feel really bad about it and then try and make up for it later and then feel really then suffer because I'm now restricting myself and then go back to doing something bad. And this is how most people see balance, you know. So it'll go like, as I said, I'm eating all the food and then I feel really bad. So then I go on some super stringent diet where I can't eat anything. And then eventually I go insane and go and eat all the food again, right? That's the same thing with money. It's like you are eating out every single day, like twice a day, which is like a lot of money. And then you're wasting huge amounts of money. And then suddenly you're just like, oh, I can't afford this thing I want to do. And you start getting really upset. So suddenly you just don't eat out at all. You don't buy, you stop even buying coffee out. You know, that's it. Or you only get the $2 servo coffee. It's so bad.
7-Eleven.
Yeah, I used to work with a really stingy guy. Like he was a gardener and he was so stingy. Like every time anything broke, he would just yell the price out. Like I remember Ryan, we used to work with him. Ryan ran over a rake once and you just hear it, and he just goes, it's a $15, eh? Yeah, just piss it away, huh? Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, it's all good. Just keep going. Just keep driving. Who cares? And this would be like the second that like he'd pull start, the mower wouldn't start. He'd be like, well, there you go. $60 repair right there. Okay, what's next? That's what he was like. It was just like everything he did, he would just yell the number out and then just cry inside. Not outside. He was an Aries, and we all know Aries don't cry. But anyway, he was anyway, yeah. But it was like, you know, so it's like that. We go, oh, that's it. I'm gonna I'm gonna spend all my money on nonsense. And this is the thing in society, you know, like that's the whole like, what is it, boomer versus Zoomer generation nonsense, where the boomers say, oh, if you just worked hard, you'd be fine. You just need to save lots of money. You know, you're just constantly buying coffees. If you just saved all your cash, you'd be fine. But again, it's all just a lack of balance, right? And then this is what I've been saying to everyone. It's like, if you want to be able to save money, you need to put away an amount that's actually, is reasonable, and also allow yourself to be happy. So put aside $50 a week for going out to get coffee, for instance, if you really like coffee. But put it into your what do you call into your my brain's just not on the word. Balance into your, what do you call it? Your budgets. Thank you. Sorry, killing me. Yeah, put it into the budget, but be realistic. You give yourself a certain amount of money in the budget to go and enjoy yourself. My father told me when I was really young. I remember my father had to budget because we were living on the dole, starting a Gnostic group. Had like $300 a week to live on, 160 rent, and we did. We lived on that for like, I think it was like 10 years. like that. It was a long time, maybe 8 years. We lived on virtually nothing. And we used to get like $10 a week from our second chamber. And it was hectic. It was really crazy. And I remember once we got a Christmas hamper, they actually delivered one of the because we were delivering Christmas hampers to the poor. And then when we got home, there was a Christmas hamper. And I remember asking my dad, I was like, what's this doing here? And Dad goes, Mick, we're poor. I'm like, what? He's like, dude, we couldn't afford anything this Christmas. I'm like, yeah, but we just spent our time driving and dropping this off to people who look like they're in way worse condition. And Dad's like, Mick, we're actually below the poverty line. I'm like, ah. And like my brain had like poverty was like the child on the UNICEF ads, like dying while reaching onto a table for like a chocolate, you know. I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, so we actually have to have some balance there. That's real balance though. What most people see as balance, as we said, is, and even Gnostics do it all the time. So I'm going to have balance in my routine. But what they actually do is they then just start doing like all these practices. Like they feel bad about themselves. They do something naughty, you have an argument with somebody, or you're lustful, or whatever. You envy someone's wealth, and then excuse me, and then you find yourself feeling really bad. So suddenly, you're doing all these practices. That's it. I'm going to do a meditation. Like I remember a guy. I had this one guy, not this Luke, the other Luke. The other Luke? Yeah, Masters. I've bumped into him 4 times now. Every time I bump into him, he's like, I'm coming back. I'm like, okay. Like, just stop telling me. Just have a conversation with me.
Yeah.
I don't like being the image of Gnosis in your life. It's worse than
guilty, that's why
I'm the image of guilt. I don't like being that. But whatever. But, anyway, I remember that when he first started, he's a real swingy guy. Full-on Sagittarius. And I remember that he would just when he first started, I remember he wanted to meditate, so he meditated for 3 hours a day, like straight away. My dad told me, he's like, you just started doing 3 hours a day. I was like, 3 hours? Like, there's no way you can uphold that. You got to build up to 3 hours. My dad does three plus hours a day, and he's built up to it over his whole life. The Zen monks do that, but they've been living like that for like 40 years to reach that. The Zen monks do like 7 hours, but they've been doing, that's their whole life. They spent ages getting there. They started off doing 10 minutes. Be like, no. He said, I can't be wasting time. You know what I mean? I says, I've just got to like cut right to he was a businessman, an entrepreneur. And he was like, I just got to cut right to the core. I just got to awaken that consciousness. I haven't got time for this. I'm just going to awaken and then move on. And I'm like, and so yeah, he's doing 3 hours. And, obviously this would only last for like, what?
A week?
Yeah. A week or so, and then he just wouldn't even come to class sometimes afterwards because he'd be feeling so upset about the fact that he couldn't uphold his 3. And then he'd come back and be like, I don't even know how to meditate. I can't do it. Gnosis is impossible. It's just too hard. I don't know how you guys do it. You're just here like doing it, and I can't do it. And he's suffering. How do you do it, Sean? And my dad would always do the same thing. My dad said, just do it like a little bit every day, mate. That's all I do. Just a little bit every day. And and you go, you're right. I'll do 4 hours. And this is exactly every goddamn time he would do this. That's not balance. Yeah. That's how people live, and that's why I can see a bit of that thing, where the older generation look at the younger generation, claim they can't afford a house or can't afford whatever, I don't know, expensive things. When it's true, I do see people just absolutely blowing huge amounts of money on totally useless things all the time. But living like that. And the worst bit is the person doesn't identify as being like that because they only identify with one side when they're in it. So if I'm feeling really good right now because I'm blowing all my money and just feeling good about it, yeah, and someone comes along and starts saying, mate, what are you talking about? You're blowing money. They'll look over here and say, no, what do you mean? I spent ages just doing nothing and being really careful. I deserve a bit of time, to do it. What are you talking about? I'm just enjoying myself. I'm having a time. But when they're on the other side, do you know what I mean? When they're on the other side and you say, well, why don't you just, not spend so much? No, I'm not going to spend anything from now on. That's it. I'm just done. I don't even want stuff anyway. It's all just materialism. Like, why are we even spending it at all? Like I never forget, I saw this YouTube video. It was amazing. It was this guy who was a millionaire, but he's just a trolley pusher in Liverpool. I don't know if you know much about England, but Liverpool are kind of renowned are just sort of like so not Liverpool, Yorkshire. Like Yorkshiremen are renowned for being kind of stingy. And it's like this is Yorkshireman and he's talking about like just how to save money, but it's like everything he's doing is just the most like like he like spray painted his couch. I'm like, why? But just everything he was doing to save money. It was like, but it turns out he's like a millionaire. And he had all these things. He like works at this place and he like rides his bike to work and he just kept going through all the ways. And I like when I was looking at the comments on the YouTube video, it was like people going, yeah, that amazing feeling when you actually suddenly realize that the sensation of just of keeping the money becomes more enjoyable than spending it. And I was like, this was like the video of the enjoyment of greed, of avarice, sorry, avarice, of owning. And it's such a funny video, but one person finally got it. It said, this whole video done in the Yorkshire accent is just amazing. Just telling you. But it was like him talking about the sort of stuff like, like turning the fridge off at night and then covering it in a giant blanket so that it wouldn't have to have the fridge on during the night, stuff like that. Yeah, about like having a shower every like 3 days and then keeping the hot water off. Like this was the level this guy was going to. Like, but he was a millionaire, but he had done it through just absolute unbelievable stinginess. And then he took you to the shops with him, and he was going and buying all of the stuff that was like out of date. And then he would go up to them and be like, "Oh, this one's actually out of date." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And then like knock more off. He's like, "Thank you." And he would just like, he'd be like, "Yeah, you get in there and." He's like, these eggs here, you're charging a fortune. People don't even realize how much they're wasted. I'm eating the same eggs that you're eating, but I'm paying half the price. And every single time I eat one of those eggs, I imagine cha-ching, 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 money just going into my bank account. And it was amazing just watching this guy. The same thing, he like collects old bikes when he sees them so that he can Frankenstein them onto his bike. And it keeps going, but it turns out that I think they had like 1.5 million pounds, him and his wife. And this wasn't like 10 years ago. They had so much money, and he's just a trolley pusher. Like, do you know what I mean? And the same thing, he was making money too by finding stuff in the trolleys and selling it and all sorts of things. You know what I mean? He was just, going around metal detecting on his weekends. Like, amazing. But, again, this isn't balanced. This is imbalanced. So, where does real balance come from? Real balance comes from a strong foundation. I like this, again, this word temperance means to make something firm, to strengthen it. Like when I think of temperance, I think of the samurai sword that starts off with this huge piece of metal and then gets folded in over and over again and turns into this just razor blade of incredibly hard steel. And it's just this firming down. So real balance, actually comes from a single strong point, which is why that beautiful teaching of Raphael Arape, balance is not to be between two options. Balance is to be at the center of the option you've chosen. And so what we see in society nowadays is people are sort of just split up everywhere. As I said, it's like, I think that balance is spending a whole day on TikTok and then feeling bad about it for the other half of the day. And going for a walk, that's balance. That's not balance. Balance is actually moving towards something. If you notice, there's no causes anymore. There's no causes. Like no one's really fighting for a cause anymore. They're all just spreading awareness. Do you know what I mean? Before, it's like if you want to be part of, like I remember when Sea Shepherd first happened, and people were like actually getting out on boats and getting run over by what is it called?
Whalers.
Yeah, by whaling boats, and like they were getting like water gunned by the Japanese. You know what I mean? It was like a really serious thing. Nowadays, it's like you're just telling people you wear a Sea Shepherd hat, you subscribe to the Sea Shepherd Instagram, but no one's doing anything.
What about people who like live up a tree for months so the tree doesn't get cut down? Like these huge trees, they'd like make a camp in the top of a tree.
Well, at least that's...
They still go around Mullen run. If something goes on, there's still enough hippies that would climb a tree and chain themselves to a tractor.
I have to say, I quite like that. Do you know what I mean? I quite like that. You know what I mean? At least get up in the bloody... At least you're doing something.
They didn't runs. They actually saved that land. They went through the legal system and actually protected all that land. What's it called?
Was that the Wallum thing?
That's the one.
Save Wallum, yeah.
Yeah, they actually won.
They did it.
They won.
They saved Wallop.
Outlawed forest deforestation.
Oh, they
All
did
of
it.
New South Wales.
Really?
Yeah.
They're still going to do it though. You know what's going to happen? They say we're going to outlaw deforestation, but you're allowed to buy forest off Aboriginals.
Don't believe you.
It's what's going on at the moment. All the national parks are becoming sacred Aboriginal sites, but then one of the recent ones is that the Aboriginals were talking about selling it to a gas company to let them frack it.
No.
True story. Look it up. It's true. This is why, remember, the whole vote yes thing was really controversial because
I wrote frack ban. I mean, I'm like,
if you vote yes,
you're talking
Aboriginal
to
people
me.
are allowed to sell their ancient land to gas companies. If you voted yes, that was all. That was why a lot of people voted no, even though they like Aboriginal people, because that was what they were allowed to do. And at the moment, it's still happening. They're kicking everybody off Mount Warning and all this sort of stuff, but then they technically own it, which means the gas companies now are no longer talking to the government. They're talking to the Aboriginals, and they're saying, "So can we like?" Sorry.
And they can do whatever they want.
No, not yet, because we didn't vote yes on the thing.
And they don't actually.
But it's only a matter of time.
They can't own all of Mount Warning because there's 100-acre lots on there that people own and live on.
Oh, that's Mount Warning, but there's all sorts of stuff like Lake Eyre. You're not allowed to go to Lake Eyre anymore, which is a lovely place. Ayers Rock, you know what I mean?
I knew there was something sus about that.
It was just
Yeah,
sus. Why would they do it? There's something going on.
And
Yeah,
one
yeah.
letter from some Aboriginal in Australia speaks for all the Indigenous across Australia. Like, what is
Yeah.
that about?
Who are incredibly fractured community. Super fractured community. But it is unfortunate. But if you look into it, I'm not being harsh, but it is a true. One of the problems with this whole situation is I think that they're getting used. I think that they're getting riled up on purpose by people because they know that because it's what they did in North America. That's exactly what they did in North America. Remember, in North America, they gave all the land back to the Native American Indians, and then the other companies came and said, "Hey, why don't you build a casino here?" It wasn't the North Americans. You think the North Americans can afford to bankroll a casino? No, of course not. There's another guy paying, going in shares. He goes in just enough so it's still technically a Native American casino, but in reality, it's actually owned by a bunch of shareholders who are not Native American. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it's the same thing. Someone's pressuring them to fight and push and take their land back, but the second they've got it, it's like, hey, can we look for gas? Can we log that entire forest? You know what I mean? Anyway, but in the end, as I said, true balance comes from actually choosing one option. Yeah. So if I actually really want to, take this, like for instance, you don't balance the alchemy by fornicating one day and then practicing alchemy the next. It just doesn't work that way because you're just going to be creating problems. You actually have to be completely within the option you've chosen and then moving forwards. And it's like that. If you see the guy working on the tightrope, what actually provides the balance for the guy on the tightrope, see if I can get it across like that. What provides the balance for the guy walking the tightrope? This isn't really the balance. The balance comes from his momentum moving forwards. So he's actually moving forwards like that, and he's moving he's at the center of his one option. The balance is here at the defining point. So it's the foundation, a firm foundation is what provides balance. And this is why temperance is so interesting. Constantly tempering and going back and reevaluating and working with my foundation is what provides a balanced life. If you want to work on the ego effectively in a very good and strong way, you'll always bring yourself back to that point of why am I doing it? What is my purpose? Yeah. And why am I actually, keeping yourself in a firm base. So creating a permanent center of gravity and then sticking within that. Yeah. So it's very interesting. The balance has generally kind of a misunderstood thing nowadays, you know what I mean? That is kind of done on purpose because, to be honest with you, like advertising companies have absolutely loved using people's imbalanced way of understanding balance in order to sell things to people. Because people who are guilty buy things much easier than people who are not. You know what I mean? Like, like as an example, on Instagram, how many ads are there about getting off Instagram?
Yeah,
It's insane. Oh, how many ads are on Facebook about stopping using Facebook? That's insane. It's actually wrong. It's kind of weird and creepy. It's like here you're on Instagram and it says, "Oh, isn't Instagram the worst?" And you're like, "Yes, it is the worst." You know what I mean? It's like, how about you pay us, $60 and we'll help you get off Instagram? Like, that'd be nice. I hate Instagram. It's taking up all my time.
Didn't you want to know about ancient world history?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of doom scrolling, scroll learning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Learn useless factoids over and over again. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen those too. The worst bit is it's like Dante Alighieri's book done for scrolling. So it's just like pictures, and it's like, I walked into the Inferno. It's like, I saw this, I saw that. It means this, and you're like, do you know what I mean? Like, you got to read it, you got to feel it. It's got to live inside you. Like, poetical works are supposed to be like slowly consumed, slowly, But yeah, so what they're actually using inside is the person's desire to be a part of, to actually find a cause. So the reason why everybody's in balance is because they have no purpose. They're actually not moving towards anything. Do you know what I mean? Even the really materialistic person can often be more balanced. The really properly material, the people who are completely defined from, like as an example, the what is it called? The insane Yorkshireman just spending all his life about money. In a weird way, because he has complete and absolute purpose, he's just completely focused. His life is actually really organized, like super organized. Yeah, he's horribly miserable, but it's very organized because he has a purpose. I mean, I think that's insane to spend your entire life just saving money. That's crazy. Literally said he doesn't have kids because he didn't want to have to pay for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's his reason. But like, at the same time, and you see that too often, these people who often run the world, materialistically speaking, because they are completely at the center of the option. They don't care what it does to the environment. They don't care what it does to people because they're completely and utterly at the center of the option they've chosen. So in the way, when you see them, they often look kind of balanced in weird ways. You know what I mean? They seem like they've actually got their life together. Well, it's not entirely true that they're always spinning and flipping out. You know what I mean? But they are centered in what they're doing. You try and tell them, don't you feel bad about what you're doing to everybody? Like, don't you feel bad for being a billionaire? They're just like, no, you. I actually saw that once. What was the guy? It was a lady talking to a billionaire, and she said, "Don't you feel bad for being a billionaire? Don't you feel bad about the fact that like you're billions of dollars and there's people just starving all over? Doesn't that make you feel bad at all?" And he literally said, like, "No, F you." Like, F you for saying it. Why is that my problem? Am I supposed to be demonized because I'm successful? You know what I mean? Why don't you fuck and get a job? You know what I mean? Get out of my face. And it's like, oh, okay. But they are at the center. But the problem is that doesn't really work because at one point in your life, eventually spirituality will well up and destroy you. And people like that are eventually going to get close to the abyss, and then they're going to realize they've wasted their life. It's exactly what happened to remember the big guy Steve Jobs, who started all this beautiful, let's be clean, happy, and balanced materialists. Yeah. Yeah, remember what his last comments is, "Oh my God, I can't believe I wasted my life. I wish I'd spent it with my family," as he was dying of leukemia and only had 3 months from finding out or something, So in that sense, it has to do with finding the foundation. So if a person, for instance, finds something like Gnosis, then we dedicate our life to that purpose, and then we work really hard, and then I have balance within that purpose. Other people would look at you and say, "You're imbalanced. You're putting all your eggs in one basket, Kai-san, moving to Kyoto Kai. Why are you doing it? You're, all of your life with Gnosis, you need to have a backup. That's balance." No, it's not. It's actually balanced to be moving in one direction, and then everything else, as he said, is balanced off the one strong fulcrum. You see what I mean? So the balance in the scale, the force of the balance comes from not, because we always focus on the sides, and everyone goes, "Oh, yeah, you need to have balance." The balance comes from down here. That's where the balance is. It's from the sturdy foundation that everything else moves on. That's the real point of balance. That's very important to understand. So a stable life comes from purpose. Yeah. Strong purpose in one way, in one direction. And we'll find if you're ever feeling imbalanced, it's because you're shaking on the foundation. That's all. Unfortunately. I find all the time when I feel sorry for myself, "Oh, it's so hard. I'm going to give lectures all the time and I'm tired and I'm sick. Poor me." So then I go off and eat some crappy food or watch some nonsense on television, And then how do I feel afterwards? Like, well, it's a bit of a waste of time, wasn't it? Could have done a practice. That would have been nice. That's it. I'll do 3 hours of meditation. You know what I mean? and I'll never watch TV ever again. You know, this is the way. Yeah? But again, it just comes from the foundation. If the foundation was stronger, there wouldn't be a problem. That's what I'm trying to say. If you had really forced, then if we had a stronger foundation inside, it would be okay. Yeah. Good. How do we feel? That's funny.
Not really.
So we're going to work with the mantram Tum tonight because Samael actually gives the mantram Tum in this particular tarot card. So the mantram Tum, he said, helps us to contact the Father. He actually gives it when we're talking about the transubstantiation. And Tum is the three primary forces. So it's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, or the Father, Son, and the Mother. Yeah. And it's a fantastic mantra. So what we're doing is we're calling the Trinity, that we're calling the three highest parts that being to us, to assist us and to help us. He says we can use that when we're calling them, if we're trying, because you can do the Eucharist at home by yourself. You can get the bread and the grape juice and bless it and ask what's it called? Ask the cosmic Christ to put his atoms into it. And some will even suggest using the mantra Tum before that as well, to ready yourself for that process, to connect with the being so that process is successful. Samael taught the people that. He said you could do it at home by yourself. It's in his book, Secret Notes of a Guru, I think it is, in that you can do that, A lot of Gnostics do that. They're looking for force, especially single people, and they want to have that force. I remember when those young guys started, Ryan and Reese and that, and they went and bought these just 2-liter flagons of grape juice, and they were doing the Eucharist every single night.
Nice.
It was just such an out of balance Gnostic young man thing to do. And they went and got these nice little glasses from the op shop, little port glasses like that. They put it on they had little altars in their houses, and they pour the wine on, and they bless it on tat sat, like that. And then pray first, then bless it, and then drink it. And they were doing this like every night. To be honest with you, it worked. They were completely mental during that time. They had so much force, those guys. They were jumping off the walls at nights. He had what's it called? He was on work cover, so he had no work all day, and was just getting paid. And so he was doing the Eucharist at night. And then he was going to Waterworld every day. He got a what do you call it? A season's pass to go to Waterworld. It's just down the road from his house. He lived like right next to it. And so all day just going on water slides.
What was he doing? What work?
He was working in a factory, and on his way to work he came off his motorbike and damaged his foot. And so he couldn't go to work anymore because he couldn't do anything. They brought him in once and tried him on the computer, but it didn't work. He's not that kind of.
Get busted going down water slides all day.
And while you're on work cover.
Yeah, it doesn't work too well.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually pretty funny. I never thought about that. But I remember he was on the work cover and he was just going on water slides all day. And then all night he's doing the Eucharist in Temperance. So he's doing transmutation, like, and then blessing grape juice and drinking, trying to feel the Christ inside himself, and then jumping on these water slides all day. And when I see him, he came to class and he was all just red. He just burnt because he'd do it with no shirt on. He just burnt all over the front, all over the back, all that. He's just like, how you going? Yeah, good, a bit stinging, but it's all right. I just remember that was I said, that's transmutation with no transformation. He wasn't working on the ego. So all this force was coming in, and he was even had the Eucharist, but he was like, all this force is coming into him, but he wasn't actually dying in the eye. So all that energy was just being channeled straight into the sensations. Like, yeah, let's have a good, wow, I'm so pumped. I got this energy. It's great. All right, sweet, cool. Let's go down the water slide.
Is this Ryan, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were trying to give up. That was how he gave up marijuana. It worked, to be fair. Yeah. When they first started, they needed to give up smoking weed. And so they started going on water slides instead.
That's so good.
It worked. All three of them. They
Whatever it
started.
takes.
They were going on the water slides like 5 days a week. You know, they would go on and they would go to Dream World and stuff. So because every time they wanted to smoke weed, they just get in the car and drive to like Dream World or to the Wild Water World and go on these big things. And it'd be this big sensation. It's quite funny because eventually it tunneled out. So they were doing that, but then they had to work, so it wasn't working so well. So they started just going to the beach every day and just spending like the whole day on the beach. So they just go to work, go to class, go to the beach. That was it. And then I remember, oh, that's right. I remember one of them. He went through this whole process. One of the three guys. He quit. They originally quit weed, started going to the water slides, and then he started going to the, and then he started just watching Naruto, huge amounts of anime, huge amounts of cartoons, and he's just watching cartoons every time he wasn't at work, you know. And then he realized, oh, that's horrible. I can't watch TV. And he said, I'm never watching TV ever again. Because he's like, he's just a lawyer. Whenever he decides, he's like, and then he decided he was gonna just go to the beach all day. So that's it. He just went to the beach all day. Anytime he wasn't at work, he was at the beach, body surfing and swimming and constantly. And then he dislocated his arm in a wave. He was body surfing and he hit the ground and dislocated his arm. And so, you know, dislocation takes quite a while. And then the best bit is it was just down the beach here. There was like a Brazilian guy lifeguard and he tried to pop it back in. And he just completely stuffed it up. He was like, don't worry. He's like, don't worry. I look after you, boy. It's okay. It's all good. No problem. I get it. And he's like, put him there. And he like wrapped a towel. I was like, easy. And he's like, ah. And he's like, oh, close. One more time. Ah. And he's like, oh, don't worry. Almost got it. Just once more. I just need more pressure. And he's like, please stop.
Oh, that's so painful.
And then when they go to the hospital, the guy was just like, oh my God. He goes, man, you've got some serious swelling. He said, did someone try and pop this back in? And it's like, yeah, 3 times. He's like, oh no. So yeah, he was doing it completely incorrectly. Like, yeah, don't worry, I watched on TV once.
Is that Ryan or Reese?
That was Reese. No, Ryan left him to rot. Remember they were body surfing together and he hit the ground and like dislocated. And Ryan just turned around and was like, oh, just looked at him and he was like, oh, and he was like looking like that. And he goes, sorry, mate, and just ran back in the surf. He just didn't want to deal with it. And so, yeah, he went in but yeah, he couldn't. So then he had the sling and he couldn't work because he's a painter and he couldn't go to the beach. They couldn't surf, body surf. He said he would go for a walk at the beach, but he couldn't, you know, body surf anymore. And so he absolutely lost his mind. Like, I tried giving him books, but he doesn't like reading because they're, you know, dodgy lads. And I tried giving him books, and then finally I was like, mate, why don't you just like watch a couple of shows, but like just chill, you know, watch a show, then go for a walk, and then go see your friend and that sort of stuff. So no, I'm never watching it ever again. I said the problem is though, you went from weed to water slides to 35 episodes of anime a day to body surfing, and now you just got nothing. I'm like, why don't you go 2 episodes a day, hang out with your mate, and then this, you know. And he finally cracked and started living in balance. It's like, actually, I actually really enjoy watching. Like, we'll just watch 2 episodes. After that, he was fine. And then doing other things, and then doing, you know, and then reading a bit of his book, and then going, and then slowly balancing his machine, you know. But it's hard, you know. You're living a life of sensations, you know. It's pretty funny though. It's such a dumb story. All right, let's do a practice.